Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sachs.
Well, welcome to another edition of Someone You Should Know. For those of you that have been following the show, thank you for coming back and visiting with us again. We are brought to you by Christine Dean, who is the DFW networking diva. Christine is a wonderful friend, but more importantly, she embraces what she does, and that is to help people accelerate their businesses. She can do that by helping you with websites, with marketing tools, with freshening up your websites, with what she calls guerrilla marketing. You can go to her website, dfwnetworkingdiva.com. Check it out. She'll even give you a free consultation to find out if there is anything that she can do to help you grow your business and expand your business. What's better than free? Contact Christine Dean, dfwnetworkingdiva.com. Again, for those that are in the Texas area following us, thanks for being here, because if you're watching us right now, that means your power is back on. We have gone through an incredible week. Was just talking with our owner-producer, Mark Warner, before the show. He's up in Michigan, and he's used to this cold weather and mounds of snow. We aren't here in North Texas. We got slammed with a winter storm last week. Temperatures 0 and below. Never happened before in northern Texas. Today, it's in the 60s today. Yesterday's high was 81. And 1 week ago, the temperature was about 1. So just incredible. And that kind of leads us into our Someone You Should Know, because in times of crisis, there are always neighbors that are helping neighbors, and people that will come out of their normal woodwork to help the community. And thanks in part to the people over at Star Local Media, and in particular, Audrey Henvey, who's a writer. She wrote a beautiful article about some guys who own Jeeps. They call themselves Jeepers, and there is a North Texas Jeep Club. They were out in mass helping people that were stuck, helping people get from one place to another. And I'm very proud. I've invited a couple of them on the show, and I do have Chris Fritchie, who is with us for the show this morning. And he is one of those Jeepers that was out there helping people that needed some help during the storm. So if you're out there, Chris, I know he was driving around in his Jeep. There he is. Unmute yourself there, Chris.
There we go. How's that, Stuart?
There you go.
Good morning.
Actually, where would a Jeeper be but out in his Jeep?
Well, I'm actually I'm not in the Jeep this morning, but I'm with a good friend, Wade, who's driving, and we're actually headed a little south of Cleveland to pick him up a Jeep so he can be part of this crazy club that that makes us do dumb things sometimes. So
until I started delving into it a little bit, I know that there's lots of auto clubs,
right?
And I happen to drive a VW Beetle, and VW there's Beetle clubs, there's Corvette clubs, there's Porsche clubs, all of these. I didn't realize that there was a Jeep club but it has a mission. Where most of the Corvette clubs, they just get together and look under each other's hoods to see what power plant you got and all. But the Jeepers are guys that really enjoy their vehicles on-road, off-road, but also at a moment's notice, they can be there in an emergency situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, you find a lot of, I've been in a Harley Davidson club. I've been in a Corvette club, and I participate a little bit in the Facebook group that is the North Texas Jeep Club, and I don't attend many of the events. I'm not that passionate about it, getting off road and getting crazy. I just I drive mine every day, and I don't want to turn it upside down or break something and have to do the crazy repairs. But on the flip side, honestly, the reason I bought a Jeep was a lot of this. I'm a photographer. We've got a studio in McKinney, and a lot of the shoots that we do, we'll go into fields or into creeks, or we're looking for places that, let's just say the road is less traveled to find that perfect location that we think we need to photograph a family or a high school senior. And it crazy as it sounds, it really helps having a Jeep to be able to get in and out of some of those locations.
Yeah, and I think over the years that's been probably the main call for people that are interested in Jeeps, is because they're not the only four-wheeled vehicles on the road, but they're probably the best because they've been around the longest,
Right.
and have the best record. But I know especially up north, Jeeps were always very popular because in the winter months, if the plows hadn't been out on the streets, the Jeeps could get through, and hardly anybody else could.
That's right. Yeah, and growing up, I've always loved Jeeps and been fascinated with them. But my dad was pretty adamant that he would never have a Jeep, own a Jeep, or drive a Jeep, because I guess he drove a Jeep as when he was in the Korean War, and he drove people around, and he said it beat him to death, and there was no way he was spending another second in a Jeep. So I enjoy it. I do. I honestly love it more in the spring and fall, when you can take the tops off and the door off, and it reminds me of when I had the Harley and did that. But it's obviously a lot safer than running down the road with two wheels.
You mentioned the military Jeeps. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I spent a fair amount of time in a Jeep overseas too.
Yep.
Our military Jeeps were nothing like what the Jeeps are on the road today.
Right.
There is a level of luxury in some of the Jeep models that is absolutely incredible. When you get up into the Laredo and the Grand Cherokee models and everything, man, there's some sophistication there too.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's some within the Jeep community, there's those that drive certain type of Jeeps that think less than for somebody who drives more like a Cherokee, or and it's really probably more in good fun than anything else. But there's no doubt it'll be hard for me not to drive a Jeep of some sort, or at least a vehicle that does have the ability to have all-wheel drive. It's just so much safer. You can get yourself in and out of situations a lot easier, and it makes it easier to help others as well. So.
Well, and last week became a bit of a challenge, and also kind of a bit of payback with your Jeeps. I know you and Craig were featured in that article talking
Right.
about your ability to go pick up some of our frontline people, our healthcare workers that were stranded at the hospitals and couldn't get home to their families, or
Right.
needed to get to their hospitals. What was that experience like for you to receive that call and say, hey, I can be there in 10 minutes to
Sure.
pick you up and help?
Yeah, it just feels like something that you're supposed to do. I don't know if you've got the means and the ability to give somebody a hand. I don't understand why more people won't do it. It's just satisfying to me, and in kind of the way I think about it is, my mom was a nurse for over 50 years at Methodist Hospital in Dallas, and she dedicated her life to helping others. She sacrificed, a good part of her relationship with my dad and with my sister and I, because she was, back then, if you had a simple heart case or something, she'd be at the hospital for days. They weren't even allowed to leave until the patient got to a certain level. And back then, and if she had to get to the hospital, she had to go. It didn't matter what the weather conditions and things like that were. And it was dangerous for her. She was in a couple of major accidents and still suffers today. And my thought has always been, gosh, if I would hope that someone would help her in a situation. My daughter's a nurse. My niece is a nurse. I just felt like it was a responsible thing to do, make sure they got to where they needed to be safely, so they could do what they do, and that's sacrifice and help others. So just a small way that I could help, and between you and me, I might have a little fun getting out there in the snow and playing around with 4-wheel drive, and so there's a little bit of both.
And also knowing that you have a vehicle that can contend with those elements. It's not like you're taking a chance and that you may end up in a ditch too.
But there's always that chance, and I think we have to be careful because growing up here, there's two different kinds of scenarios that we are fortunate that we or unfortunate, I guess you could say, that we have to deal with. It's really two different scenarios. I don't know that I would have offered, but when you get snow, that's one thing. Snow and cold temperatures, a Jeep and someone can handle that. When you get the ice storms, Tennessee had really got the worst part from my recollection last week with the ice. It doesn't matter if you're in a Jeep or a Hummer or a huge military vehicle. When you get on ice, that's a different story.
That's right.
Four-wheel drive doesn't help you stop. And that's the biggest issue with ice. But with what we had last week, it was really more just difficulty getting around, because we don't have the resources here in North Texas to keep the roads clean, and so it's really difficult for a lot of vehicles to get anywhere. I saw a lot of accidents while I was out on the road, giving some rides and such.
For those that are watching and listening to us that are not in the Texas area, maybe you're up in the northern tier of the country. We do not, as Chris was just saying, we don't have the resources. A very, very limited amount of salt that will go out on the highways. The problem is there are no vehicles, plows, anything to do any of the secondary or residential roads. So while the highway may have been iced, may have been de-iced, or spread with sand or salt, you can't get to the highways because we are on the back streets, and those are the streets that are impassable. So you have to kind of wait it out.
Right.
And we also had to contend with power outages and intermittent power outages by the electric companies. That had its own set of circumstances where people would lose power for up to 2 hours at a time. Well, I was fortunate. We've got gas appliances in our home, so we were able to fire up the gas fireplace. But I have an assisted living facility that's right next door to where we live, and those people require electricity for their oxygen, and many of them went into some cardiac arrest. They got to get to the hospital. Some of the ambulances could get out, but in many cases, they needed to rely on people like Chris and the Jeepers in order to try and fill in and get people to where they needed to go. So, it was kind of a military instinct that kicks in for you and your guys. Just roughly, do you know how many Jeepers there are in the North Texas Jeep Club?
Oh, I don't. If we go to a break, I can pull it up and look on the Facebook group. But there's probably, and I'm just guessing, there's probably 20 or 30,000 members in that Facebook group, maybe more than that.
Wow.
And I know, I saw a brief. I didn't, and I believe they had a formal, a lot more of a formal process to connect those that were trying to help with those that needed help. I didn't enroll in that process. There's a Facebook group that I participate a little bit in called McKinney Cares, and it's more localized, more obviously it's McKinney, and we live in McKinney. Our business is in McKinney, and for me, I just felt like the McKinney supports our business, the city of McKinney, or the residents of McKinney, I should say. So I felt that possibly I could do better helping those right around me versus signing up in a group that covered the complete Metroplex, which I'm not sure what the population is. It's millions. But I felt like I could do, I just wanted to benefit my local community. I think that's where we drop the ball as human beings, if you could say. We don't do enough to give back to our local community. If we'd all volunteer a little bit more and help out our neighbors a little bit more, we'd probably be a little less jaded about politics and social issues, and we'd connect better with each other and recognize that we're better off together than we are separate.
You are absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head, because and not only that, I'll take it a step further. That is for those that do step forward and help out in a crisis. When the crisis is over, sometimes we all just kind of go back into our own little houses, and we forget that there may be that ongoing need. And okay, I did my part. Now I just go back to life as usual. But there are some people that are just ingrained. Now, you mentioned your mom was a nurse.
That's right.
That Craig also, who was featured in the article, his mom was a nurse. So you kind of have a one-upmanship.
I didn't catch
there.
that.
Because you know the importance.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to. Clearly, that just goes to, if you've ever lived with a nurse or been raised by a nurse or had a nurse that was a really close family member, it's not a job. It's not a career. It's a calling. It's and most people, one of the things that drove my daughter crazy when she decided to be a nurse was she would get asked, "Well, don't you want to be a doctor? Don't you?" And it's like a lot of people will think less than, because she's only going to be a nurse or something like that. And I think what most people don't realize is, the doctor sees the patients a very small percentage of the time that they're in the hospital or even in the doctor's office. It's the nurse that really deliver the care that the doctor has prescribed. They're the ones that spend hours and hours and hours with these patients trying to make them comfortable. And so often they're the ones that when there's an emergency, the nurse is the first one in the room, the first one providing care that saves the lives of these people. And it tears me up. I've just got so much respect. My mom sacrificed a lot, and my daughter does too, just to help others. They don't do it for the pay. They're smart enough, and they've got the God-given abilities. They could do other things that would pay them a lot more. They just truly believe in helping others. And when you grow up around that, it just seems like it's something you're supposed to do. You don't really think of it.
You're absolutely right. And just like in the firefighters and EMTs, very often in an emergency situation, it's that ambulance personnel that are first ones to take care of the person until they get to the hospital to see the nurses, and then ultimately to the doctors. So the doctor
correct.
is usually maybe the end of the line for the person that you see. You're working with emergency technicians that must make split second decisions in life and death situations.
Right.
When we deal with things like we dealt with last week, probably for those that are, again, watching and listening, wherever you are, you probably saw the news reports of an 18-wheeler that jackknifed out on one of our major highways. And when it was all over, there were more than 100 vehicles that slid right into the vehicles that had already been stopped on the highway. There was no way they could stop. 100+ vehicles. There were some deaths. There were a lot of injuries.
Yes.
Who did we have to rely on in order to get there to help these people? It was some of the ambulances, but I'll bet that there were a lot of Jeepers that were on the scene to help in whatever way they could to transport people too.
Well, it would be remiss of me, it would be wrong of me not to say that didn't inspire me also to get out and try and help when all this happened, because there's something that a lot of people don't realize. It's kind of a perfect storm scenario, the way that happened. And my daughter was one of the first ones that sent me the information that morning, because we were asleep. It happened at about 6:45 a.m. And the way the nursing and hospitals run is shift change are around 7 a.m. And where that happened over in Fort Worth was close to a hospital. A lot of the people that were in that accident, and a lot of people don't know this, were nurses and first responders. firefighters, police officers, nurses. There was a news report that talked about how so many of the victims were wearing scrubs. It's because they were on their way to work for the 7 o'clock shift change when that accident happened. So, that freaked me out a little bit as well, because I knew that that's the exact same time that my daughter would be going to work while all of this storm was going on. So it made it even a lot more difficult for the first responders that did respond, because they knew a lot of those people that were in the accidents, because they see them in the emergency rooms. They see them on the ambulances and the fire trucks and the police officers, because they were themselves involved in that accident. And so that also inspired me. And so in Texas, which is a little different than some places, our coldest temperatures happen just before sunrise typically. And so there was a touch of moisture that day that went through that little segment of town. And it happened at the same time we had our lowest temperature of the morning. And if what I hear is correct, that's why only a certain part of the highway froze right there, was because that's where the small part of the moisture and the cloud went through right at that wrong moment where our temperature hit below freezing and froze. And that was a major cause in that accident. But it really tore at my heartstrings that there were so many first responders and nurses that were involved in that accident. So it only, I don't know that the right word was inspired, but it only pulled at me to say, gosh, I need to try to help out while this is all going on, so we don't have more of these situations.
And we know that those people are trained to react to situations like that, and they can go through their entire careers and never have to put that training to use. And yet,
Yep.
in just a moment's time, all of a sudden, it's like that adrenaline kicks in, and you do what you were trained to do. And probably the fact that you just mentioned that there were so many medical personnel that were involved in that accident and in that area, it probably saved a lot of lives. And
Correct. Yep.
So you don't drive Jeeps for a living. And the one thing I know, that you're a professional photographer.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the photography that you do and where you're located too.
Well, we're in downtown McKinney. I think I mentioned it earlier. We're known for our Santa portraits. Norman Rockwell has always been a big inspiration to me. I grew up in scouting. My dad kind of grabbed me by the ear and said, "No, you're going to do this, and you're going to become an Eagle Scout." And it sounds corny, maybe a little bit to others, but a lot of that had a lot to do with just the mindset of trying to help others and give back and things like that. So, we, with the Norman Rockwell inspiration from getting the Boys Life magazines as a kid, I've just always been inspired by the storytelling and such that goes on with his images. And I entered photography late in my life. I had a landscape business out in East Texas, and picked up a camera because I didn't want to pay what the professionals were charging to create our portfolio. And I fell in love with photography then. And after I got tired of corporate America and all of that, I decided I needed a change. And it was, becoming apparent that I was good enough that maybe I could do this for a living. And so it's been great. We do family portraits. We do some commercial work, and we're launching a new series called Stronger Women. I don't want to give away too many details. Some of it's a little personal, but my wife and I have been helping a lady that's going through a tough divorce with some abuse, and it's really kind of inspired us. And I won a major national award here in the last month or so, and it's inspired us to.
You may have to say that again, because you're
Yeah, my phone rang, and so I had to send it to voicemail. I said we got inspired to create some images, and we thought, how could I do what I love to do? And it's another example of trying to give back to the community. How could I create some artwork that that might lift up others. And it was inspired by this woman that we've been helping the last 6 months or so. And so we're going to create these individual art pieces that help tell the story of women that have struggled. And we're going to do a gallery showing. And our goal is to raise $5,000 through this art project that I'm doing to benefit Love Life Foundation in McKinney, which is Mayor Fuller and his wife Maylee's foundation. We've been a part of that and helping them. We had a fundraiser a year and a half ago that raised some money for a gentleman that was in a motorcycle accident. And so we've started a series and we're launching it here in the next few days to help women tell their story with some amazing art pieces that will be personal to them. And some of the proceeds will go to that. And we've had someone step up and they say, well, whatever we can raise through doing these, they'll match it. So
excellent.
It's another way that we feel like we can try and give back. We're not wealthy. We're not well off by any means, but if I can use whatever little bit of talent I can to help others and give back, it's something that just we feel like we have to do.
And you're doing this with your wife. You and your wife are both photographers.
Yeah, my wife is she actually does help shoot some, but her education, she has her master's in education administration. She was a teacher at McKinney ISD and then went on to be an assistant principal. And whether it's right or wrong, a few years ago, the Parkland shooting happened where down in Florida. And it always made me nervous of her having to go to school. And when she was an assistant principal at a high school, she was responsible for handing out the discipline. And selfishly, I said, hey, I know her and I know her heart. And I knew if something happened at her school, she would be the first one stepping in front of a kid to protect a kid. And I just finally said, with all of these shootings and everything that's going on, they just don't pay you enough to do what you would do. And at the time I needed help in the studio. So to be honest, we sacrificed. We gave up her income and benefits and those type of things for her to come help us at the studio. And we've had to change our lifestyle a little bit, but we feel that it's good for us and our family. And now it helps having someone like her there as a partner on a daily basis that can help me with my vision, where I can work on the creative and she can help a little bit with that business side.
Well, just like your mother, I so admire your wife because I have a sister that was a teacher for 35 years, and they are the unsung heroes of our communities, and especially
absolutely
now that we've been going through this COVID, what our teachers and teaching administrators have had to go through to keep our children educated is an absolute incredible undertaking.
I don't think many people know how difficult it is for the teachers and how they put themselves in harm's way every day to help our children and protect our children, whether it's situations at home that they're trying to protect the kids from. And I don't mean that in necessarily a bad way. It can just be that the kids are hungry, that the kids don't have anybody to talk to. And I grew up in a scenario like that. My mother adopted me when I was 8, but before that, I came from a difficult home, and I love my biological mother and such, but she was basically a single mom, and my little brother and I had to fend for ourselves a lot just so that she could make enough money to keep a roof over our head and kept us fed the best she could do. And she did a great job, but the teachers, gosh, what they do and out of their own pocket to help these kids is just amazing.
That's right. And I don't think they're adequately compensated for it either.
No, and that drives me crazy a little bit, obviously, because my wife was a teacher. But, none of us like taxes and high taxes and things like that. But as we scream that we don't want to pay any more taxes and we don't want this and we don't want that, well, our taxes are what pay for our teachers and our first responders and all of these kind of things. And when we cut taxes and we cut and we cut and we cut so that we can live just a little bit better, I think sometimes we need to think about who we're cutting from, not just it's just not the big bad government. Sometimes these are people that are there to help us, and we can't make it without them, and we need to make sure that they're well taken care of.
Well, they're vital to our future and the future of our children and the next generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, at any time when you were growing up, You said you went through scouting and everything.
Yep.
Did you ever have an interest in photography during that time?
I've always had a little bit of interest in art and things like that, but honestly, I don't know that I really can look back and say that I did. I can always remember seeing things, if this makes sense, through a camera lens. I can always remember looking at things and composing things just in my eye. Whenever I do a thing, I struggle calling myself an artist. I've gotten better at accepting that. It's just such a high standard, I think, when someone says they're an artist. But we're all artists in our own ways. So I used to piddle with drawing a little bit. I can't draw a stick figure, but if I can look at something, we all did it. You probably remember the magazines we'd get back when we were younger, and that have the little cartoon character, and it says, "Hey, if you can draw this, draw it, mail it in, and you can win a certificate or a scholarship to an art school."
Draw this puppy.
Yeah, or cartoon character or something. And I always loved to doodle and do that kind of thing. So there's always been a little bit of that art side to me, and maybe it just took me a while to figure out what that calling is. And I'll be honest, I'm still learning. I've got a mentor, and I took a private lesson yesterday to keep developing my skills and my art and my craft, not just professionally but personally, so I can better express myself and help others tell their stories with our images.
Well, art is an all-encompassing word because there's a lot of different forms of art. You said you were in the landscape business,
right?
There is art in landscape.
Oh, absolutely.
Too. So, as you say, you were creating art when you were doing your landscaping. That's right. And laying out designs.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of it transitioned over. I did when we had our landscape business in East Texas, I did all the design work and laid everything out. And then my partner at the time kind of helped handle the operations side of things. So we both handled sales. I handled the design, and he oversaw the installation. So that was a big part of my desire to do art. And what's kind of ironic, I guess, sitting here is as we're on our way to pick up this Jeep with one of my closest friends, if anything, he could almost say that he was responsible for getting me back into photography. I used to shoot our landscape projects for my portfolio, and then I put photography away. And he called me one day because he's a musician, and he said, "Hey, I need some pictures for my website, and would you do them? I've seen some of your work." And I said, "Oh man, it's been several years, and I'm not even sure if my camera works." And I said, "Well, I'll grab it, and I'll grab some film." And he said, "Okay." He goes, "I bought this little digital camera." And I said, "I don't know anything about digital." And so we went up to Sherman and shot for a half an afternoon. And I can see those images in my head. And I know when he was doing his band stuff years ago, he was still using some of those images. So my buddy Wade sitting here right next to me definitely re-triggered and inspired me to really get into photography, because some of that stuff that we captured and he used it for a decade, to promote his music and stuff. And that's probably when I, as you could say, I really truly fell in love with photography was when I did that shoot in downtown Sherman.
And for how many years have you been doing photography professionally?
I've been doing it for about 15 years now.
But if the folks that are watching and listening have an opportunity, you have a Facebook page, isn't it? Facebook at Fritchie Studios.
Yep.
Chris Fritchie Studios.
Chris Fritchie Studios Chris or Fritchie with an F. A lot of people miss the F, but Chris Fritchie Studios, or you can go to chrisfritchiestudios.com. But our Facebook page is a good place to learn about us and what we do. We've got some. We've taken this time during COVID and after Santa season to kind of refocus, maybe rebrand a little bit would be another way to say it. So we're doing some really, really cool things. We took the time during COVID to really look at ourselves. What do we want to do? And I've kind of made the decision now that I want to do what I love to do within photography instead of just doing whatever pays the bills. Now we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we do what I love, and can we make that pay the bills within photography? Right. we are, our clients are telling us, we want you to do that. That's what we love is the stuff you're passionate about. And we think we've finally figured out a way to do a little bit more of the, if you want to call it fine art, not just your, not just your family.
Well, and being a Jeeper, that gives you the opportunity to get off road and find those behind the scenes backwoods open air type areas that would give you the opportunity to get those oh, who am I talking to then? We lost the guest. He mentioned something about his phone. So just to kind of take the reins myself for just a minute in case Chris does rejoin us. What again? Just to reiterate what Craig Jones and Chris Fritchie did last week was something that I think that there's a lot of people, not necessarily just Jeep owners, but people who just came out of the woodwork and said we want to be able to help. And there are documented stories of nurses, of healthcare workers, administrators, frontline people like police that got stranded and needed help. And this Jeep Club was out there in our North Texas area. As Chris was saying, a lot of the emphasis was on the Dallas, Fort Worth area, the northern part of Texas, up around McKinney and Sherman and Denton, and our area was not as adequately served. These guys contacted each other and said, hey, listen, let's stay in touch. They had a plan to get out in the elements and to help people wherever and whenever they needed it by getting people to and from their jobs. Cannot even begin to thank them enough because, as we have often said, we're all human beings. We're here to help each other. And these guys from the North Texas Jeep Club, congratulations to all of you. Keep up the great work because there are going to be other instances where somebody is in peril and need, as we mentioned, that 100 car pile up on the highway. It's just a matter of time when something of that nature is going to arise. And in the middle of it is probably going to be somebody with a Jeep that can get through it and help people out. So it kind of puts a seed in the back of my head that maybe my next vehicle, I may have to look at a Jeep again because it's been a long time since I've driven one. Well, I'm sorry that we lost Chris. And I thank him very, very much for being a part of the show. Oh, and he's back.
I'm back.
He's
Yeah, so let me plug my headphones back in there for you, Stuart.
And I was just telling the audience. Gee, I hope he didn't go off the road.
Yeah, we need a Jeep guy to come get us out of a ditch.
Yeah.
No,
call the North Texas Jeep Club. Hey, I need some help.
Right, exactly. Yes. No, sorry, we lost. Phone died. You know how that is, technology. So
no, and I was just telling the audience while you were offline there for a few minutes about that having a Jeep, being a Jeeper, has given you another dimension in your photography because you can go into areas off-road and into the woods and streams and
Absolutely.
get those shots that nobody else can get.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And I look forward to doing a lot more than that. Real quick, and I know we're probably going to wrap up soon here, but one of my wife and ours dream, it's probably more my dream than hers, but is, I want to get one of these little mini trailers, teardrop trailers. And when Santa season ends and we hook up to it and just hit the road for a month or 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And with the Jeep, we could be able to get into some places with the national parks or places that we could photograph things. And I'd love nothing more to even do that and do a tour, let's say a national tour, take a month out of the spring and schedule with people to do portraits in some of these great unique locations that are maybe a little bit more difficult to get in and out of, and see our country. I did a little bit of that 10 years ago when I photographed a book for a local legend in the music industry called Stephen Arnold, where I traveled all over the country and shot his guitars in all of these locations. And Wade actually was my co-pilot for a couple of weeks when we traveled all over the West. So I'd love to do that again with the Jeep, where we could really get into some great places.
Well, and again, I want to invite the audience to visit your Facebook page or your website, chrisfritchiestudios.com. I did comment to Chris the first time I went to his, I think it was the Facebook. He does the newborn photography, and he has got the most amazing, beautiful photo of this huge teddy bear with this newborn in its lap. You have to see it to appreciate it. But you said that's an area of photography that you also love and you want to expand on too.
Yep, we've elevated my assistant to kind of oversee our newborn world, and together she and I are really looking forward to creating some timeless art for people that are celebrating, the birth of a new child and such.
Well, I think it's really incredible when a person like yourself can do something that they enjoy doing and make a career out of it. Yep. Because there's far too many people that are like in dead-end jobs that hate going to work every day. And I love going to work every day, and I know you enjoy going to work every day.
Almost every day.
Almost every day. Yeah, you got to take a day off.
Yeah, there you go. You can find me on a golf course occasionally. I'm not going to lie. So.
Well, but you enjoy doing that too, so that's
absolutely yes.
Well, Chris, thank you very, very much for taking the time and talking with us. Thank you again for what you and your fellow Jeepers did last week in our community, and the best of luck to you in your photography future and in your Jeeper future.
Stuart, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And if anything comes out of this, I just hope it inspires others to give back to the community and help others when they need it. That's really what's important here.
Very good. Well, the very best to you, to Chris Fritchie. Thanks for being someone you should know.
Thanks, sure.
And that'll do it for another session. Go out and make it a good one. As I always say, be yourself, because everyone else is taken. So we'll catch you again right here, same place, same time next week for another edition of Someone You Should Know.